I'm Anthony Smith, and this is Conservative Fodder. It's Wednesday, October 7th, 2020, the night of the VP debate. The media in recent days has been pushing on about the positive COVID diagnosis of Donald Trump. And then, further, his early arrival back to the White House and his encouragement to the American people that COVID is not as big of a deal as it's been made out to be. They're up in arms about it. How could he go back to work and be fine? Let us not forget it wasn't that long ago that Nancy Pelosi was in Chinatown encouraging people to come out and mingle without masks. Come on down. It's fine. Trump is totally wrong about the virus. Yeah, come on. It's odd how the Democrats are now saying Trump didn't do enough. It's amazing that the American people are so willingly letting the wool be pulled over their eyes. The Democrats are jumping up and down about his drive-by waving. And in fact, I was a little surprised in his behavior myself. It caused me to start doing some research, and I found something kind of interesting. The steroid Trump was given when he got to the hospital is called dexamethasone, and listed as an adverse side effect is euphoria. So if you take that into consideration, some of his actions make sense. It explains why he keeps saying he feels wonderful, better than he has in years. He's high. You can see it now. Hey, security guard, let's go for a ride. I can see how that played out. Further, they're pushing on this whole mask thing. Let's not fool ourselves. Masks are good to stop a person from stopping the spread of an illness. In other words, if you're sick, it stops you from giving it to somebody else, but does not stop you from getting sick if you're around somebody who is sick and isn't masked. So instead of worrying about who Trump got sick from, we should be worrying, who Trump got sick, we should be worrying who he got sick from. Just the timing seems a little odd. Anyways, once again, I'm Anthony Smith. This is Conservative Fodder. We'll be doing the debate here with you guys. Well, this is Conservative Fodder. We're back here for the VP debate. Hopefully, this is going to be a little smoother than the last debate. One of the things I think is kind of interesting is they've now made a button so the moderator can go and mute out one person or the other during the debate. It's kind of an interesting thing that they've added on thanks to that last one. And you know how it's going to be used, because most of the time these moderators are of a liberal basis, so they're always going to be using it to drown out our guy and make sure that their guy can go and say the point that they wanted to get across. Now, with that being said, I do think in the last debate, Trump should have just let Biden go and hang himself, because I don't think Biden could go talk for 2 minutes without, turning into to Grandpa Simpson. I mean, it's the whole entire... okay. It's... The guy's got nothing but pennies rolling around, trying to rub around in his brain. There's just nothing in there. You got to remember this guy has had 2 brain aneurysms, and one of them is enough to cause pretty severe brain damage. How the hell this person, how the hell he stayed into Congress, much less was managing being a VP. Actually, VP was before those 2 brain aneurysms. So no, he's had 2 brain aneurysms since he was the VP. It's pretty crazy that they even consider this person as a potential president. But nonetheless, he's up in the polls right now. We'll have to go and see how that all plays out as well. I'm really hoping that those poll numbers are off. I got a sneaking suspicion, regardless as to whether or not we have the votes or not, it's going to be a Biden presidency, simply because the election is going to be rigged enough that we're not going to go in and get Trump in for a re-election. Anyways, we're going to keep going here. We're going to go and watch this debate. We're going to have some commentary.
Watching. One note, no one in either campaign or at the commission or anywhere else has been told in advance what topics I'll raise or what questions I'll ask.
Yeah, I'm not sure I believe that. After the last one, Biden, you could actually see him having a microphone and wire on him. Because a sneaking suspicion somebody gave his camp the question before the last go-around.
We will then have 2 minutes.
And then you listen to him blabber like an idiot around when Trump just blew it all out of the water, and Biden said, start drooling over himself.
At that point, although there will always be more to say, we'll move on to the next topic. We want a debate that is lively, but Americans also deserve a discussion that is civil. These are tumultuous times, but we can and will have a respectful exchange.
I think the
about
American
big
people
issues
like the fact that
facing
it
our
wasn't
nation.
a civil
Let's
debate.
begin with the
I
ongoing
don't think the rest of
pandemic
society
that has
right now is
cost
very
our
civil. I
country
think we got
so much.
General population is pissed
Senator
the
Harris,
fuck
the
off.
coronavirus is not under control. Over the past week, Johns Hopkins reports that 39 states have had more COVID cases over the past 7 days than in the week before. 9 states have set new records.
Yeah, because they've been rioting
Even if a
in those
vaccine
states.
is released soon, the next administration will face hard
You have
choices.
a bunch of people running around on
What would a
spitting on
Biden
each other. No wonder you
administration
got
do in January
a
and
virus
February
moving on
that
really,
a
really
Trump
fast in those
administration wouldn't do? Would
Democrat-run
you impose
states.
new lockdowns for businesses and schools and hotspots?
Which is what they want.
A federal mandate to wear masks? You have 2 minutes
Which is
to
also what they
respond
want.
without interruption.
Thank you, Susan.
Except for us, we'll definitely
the
interrupt.
American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. And here are the facts. 210,000 dead people in our country in just the last several months.
No, that's over
Over
a
7
year
million people who
timeline.
have contracted this
You
disease.
should compare that with the flu
1 in
numbers for the
5
same
businesses
duration of time.
closed. We're looking at frontline workers who have been treated like sacrificial workers. We are looking at over 30
You mean like
million
the police that you
people
guys have defunded?
who in the last several months had to file for unemployment. And here's the thing. On January
Most of those are
28th,
restaurant workers, by the way, that
Vice President and
couldn't
the President were
be at their
informed
jobs because
about
the
nature
governors
of
of
this
their
pandemic.
states
They were
have made it
informed
so
that it's
that they
lethal
couldn't
in
be open.
consequence, that it is
Has
airborne,
nothing to do with this current president.
that it will
That's a
affect
states'
young
rights
people,
issue.
and that it would be contracted because it is airborne. And they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on
Right, which is why they had a
January
China
28th,
ban before
as opposed to March
before
13th,
it ever came
what
out
they
to the
knew,
general
what you might
public,
have done
which
to
of course you
prepare?
guys stood against.
They knew and they covered it up.
There was
The
no
president
cover-up.
said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness
No, he tried to
of
go
it.
and stop the general
president
population
said,
from freaking
you're on one
out.
side of his ledger if you wear a mask, you're on the other side of his ledger if you don't. And in spite of all of that, today they still don't have a plan.
No, I'm pretty sure they
still
have a plan.
don't
It's
have a
called
plan. Well, Joe
make a
Biden does.
vaccine.
And our plan is about
let the
what we need
capitalist
to do
system
around a
do its
national
job.
strategy for contact tracing, for testing, for administration of the vaccine, and making sure that it will be free for all. That is the plan that Joe Biden has and that I have, knowing that we have to get a hold of what has been going on, and we need to save our country. And Joe Biden is the best leader to do that. And frankly, this administration has forfeited
Thank you,
their
Senator
right to
Harris.
re-election based on this.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice
No, they
President
believe
Pence,
that
more than
they should forfeit their right to
210,000
re-election
Americans
by
have died
force.
of COVID-19 since February. The U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population is higher than that of almost every other wealthy nation on earth. For instance,
Which is
our
not
death
true if you
rate is
consider
2.5
like India,
times
which has
that
a
of
billion
Canada
people on
next
it,
door.
it has a 6-time
You head
higher rate
the
than us.
administration's coronavirus task force.
And then nations that
Why
didn't
is
lock
the
down,
US death
like
toll
Sweden,
as
have a
percentage
much,
of our
much
population
lower rate of
higher
coronavirus.
than that of almost every other wealthy country? And you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Susan, thank you. And I want to thank the Commission and the University of Utah for hosting this event. And Senator Harris, it's a privilege to be on the stage with you. And our nation has gone
Does it
through
look
a
like,
very
you know,
challenging
the Pope
time
boxes? You
this
see the
year.
Pope driving around in the Pope car with
But I want the American
plexiglass.
people to know
Kind of, anyways.
that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first. Before there were more than 5 cases in the United States, all people who had returned from China, President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world.
And there you go.
Now, Senator Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and hysterical. But I can tell you, having led the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national mobilization since World War II. And I believe it saved hundreds of thousands of American lives. Because with that time, we were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done to date. We were able to see to the delivery of billions of supplies so our doctors and nurses had the resources and support they needed. And we began, really before the month of February was out, to develop a vaccine and to develop medicines and therapeutics that have been saving lives all along the way.
This is a very, very
Under President
good,
Trump's
good
leadership,
answer,
Operation
by
Warp
the way.
Speed, we believe, will have literally
Been very
tens of
accurate.
millions of doses of a vaccine
Very,
before
very
the end of this
on
year.
the base.
The reality is, when you look at the Biden plan, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing every step of the way.
It's
And
because
quite
Biden
frankly,
literally doesn't have any original
when
ideas.
I look at their plan
He
that
stole
talks
the
about
whole entire Buy
advancing
America,
testing, creating new PPE, developing a
Employ
vaccine,
America routine that Trump was going at.
it looks a little bit
in his
like
different
plagiarism,
speeches. Biden in
which is
this
something
last
Joe
go-around
Biden
when
knows
asked
a
about
little
the
bit about.
economy,
I think
literally
the American
quoted
people
Trump
know
in
that
it.
this is a president
The guy
who has
doesn't have
put
any of his own
President
ideas.
America
And
first,
how
and the
could he? Once
American
again,
people,
the
I believe
gentleman
with my heart,
has
can
also
be
Thank you,
proud
said
of the
that his family's
sacrifices
allowing
they
this to
have
occur, allowing
made
him to be drug
that
out.
saved
Thank you,
countless
Vice President
American
Pence.
lives.
Senator Harris, would you
Oh.
like to respond?
Absolutely. Whatever the vice president is claiming the administration has done, clearly it hasn't worked. When you're looking at over 210,000 dead bodies in our country, American lives that have been lost, families that are grieving that loss. And you know, the vice president is the head of the task force and knew on January 28th how serious this was. And then thanks to Bob Woodward, we learned that they knew about it. And then when that was exposed, the vice president said, when asked, well, why didn't y'all tell anybody? He said, because the president wanted people to remain calm.
And I see no
Well, let's go
signs
right up.
that
No,
that's a
but this is
bad
not-
call. I
this is
mean,
important.
And I
you've got a
wanna-
pandemic
Mr.
coming. Do you
Vice
really
President,
want the
I'm speaking.
population out
I'm
there
speaking.
up in
Yeah,
arms,
you have
spreading
a
it
few
more?
more seconds, and then
Hell
we'll give the
no,
vice
but-
president a
Thank you.
chance to
So I
Of course,
want
that
to
didn't
ask the
stop
American
them from
people, how calm were you when
instigating
you were
and stoking
panicked
the
about
fire
where you're going to get your
of,
next roll of
of,
toilet paper?
divergence
How calm
in
were
our
you
country
when
to
your
go and
kids
get
were
their
sent
own
home from
people
school
out
and you
in the
didn't know when they
streets
could go back? How
freaking
calm
out
were
and
you
spreading it around.
Thank
when
you,
your
Senator
children
Harris.
And then blame
couldn't
it
see
on
your
Trump.
parents because you were afraid they could kill them?
Let's give Vice President Pence a chance to respond. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute to
You
respond.
know, there's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one. And I want all of you to know that you'll always be in our hearts and in our prayers. But when you say what the American people have done over these last 8 months hasn't worked, that's a great disservice to the sacrifices the American people have made.
I'm referring
The
to
reality,
the
if I may finish, Senator, the reality is Dr. Fauci said everything that he told the president in the Oval Office, the president told the American people. Now, President Trump, I will tell you, has boundless confidence in the American people, and he always spoke with confidence that we'd get through this together. But when you say it hasn't worked, when Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and our medical experts came to us in the second week of March, they said if the president didn't take the unprecedented step of shutting down roughly half of the American economy, that we could lose 2.2 million Americans. And that's the reality.
Thank you.
They also
Thank you,
said
Vice
to us if we
President
did
Pence.
everything right, Susan, we could still lose more than 200,000 Americans.
Vice
Now,
President
one
Pence.
life lost is
Thank
too
you.
many, Susan. But the American people, I believe, deserve credit for the sacrifices that they have made, putting the health of their family and their neighbors first, our doctors, our nurses, our first
Thank you, Vice
responders.
President Pence.
And I'm going to speak up on behalf of what the American people have done.
Vice President Pence, you were in the front row
good
in
answer.
a Rose Garden
A really,
event 11
really
days ago.
solid
What
answer.
seems to have been a super spreader event for senior administration and congressional officials. No social distancing, few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID when you at the White House have not been doing so?
Well, the American people have demonstrated over the last 8 months that when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know first.
And that's a good
President
point.
Trump
It's
and I have great
allowing it
confidence
to people's
in the
own,
American people and
you
their
know,
ability
allowing them to make their own
to take that
decision, giving them the information, allowing them to
and
make
put
their
it
own
into
decision
practice.
on how this goes.
In
And
the
that's
height
why
of the
other countries
epidemic,
that did not
when we were
lock
losing
down didn't have near
a
the
heartbreaking
problem.
number
When they
of
realized what was
2,500
going on,
Americans a day.
they
We
took
surged
matters into their own
resources to New
hands
Jersey
and
and
either
New York,
socially
New Orleans,
distanced
and
or,
Detroit. We told
you know,
the
it wasn't
American people what
necessary
needed to be done, and the
to
American
go
people
into
made
a
the
group of people. They
sacrifices.
didn't.
When the outbreak in the Sun Belt happened
You know,
this
making
summer,
laws
again,
and legislation to
Americans stepped forward.
for us
But
to
the
go and
reality
wear
is the
masks
work
or not
of
be
the
able
President of the
to
United States goes
congregate
on. A vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United
That's
States.
a huge violation of the
has come
Constitution.
upon
We
us,
have the
and
right to
President
peaceably
introduced
assemble.
Judge
Hell,
Amy
we have the right to go to the
Thank you.
church, and
Thank you, Vice
yet churches
President.
still aren't allowed
If
to
I may
leave
say, that
this
Rose
state that
Garden
we're in,
event-
Washington State.
There's been a great deal of speculation about it. My wife
It's
Karen and I
interesting.
were there and honored to be there. Many of the people who were at that event, Susan, actually were tested
Yes.
for coronavirus. And it was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly and routinely advise. The difference here is President Trump and
Which
I
is funny,
trust
that goes
the
against the
American
lockdown,
people
doesn't it?
to make
During the
choices
lockdown,
in
you
the
send
best
people
interest
indoors
of
and
their
tell them not to
health.
leave. So that's
And
exactly
Joe
what they
Biden
do.
and Kamala Harris
Then it makes the spreading
consistently talk
worse.
about mandates, and not just mandates
You want
with
them
the
outside. You want
coronavirus,
them not
but
around
the
other
government
people. You want them
takeover
not
of
locked
Thank you.
indoors.
Thank you,
the
Vice
Green New
President.
Deal, all government control. We're about freedom and respecting the freedom of the American people.
There you
Let's
go.
talk about respecting
Good
the
answer.
American people. You respect the American people when you tell them the truth. You respect the American people when you have the courage
Which we've
to be a
always
leader,
done.
speaking of those things that you may not want people to hear, but they need to hear so they can protect themselves. But this administration
Really, do you want to go talk
stood
about how
on
you slept to the
information
top?
that
You
if
want to go
had
talk
as a
about how
parent,
you
if had
single-handedly
as a
helped
worker
push through
known you didn't have
legislation
enough money saved up, and now
imprisoned
you're standing in a food line
large quantities
because
of black
the
population in your
ineptitude
state?
of a
Do you want to tell the truth on
administration that
this,
was
or
unwilling to
do you
speak
guys
the
just
truth
want
to the American
the
people.
veil of the
So
bullshit
let's
that you
talk
guys are
about
currently running?
caring about the American people. The American people have had to sacrifice far too much because of the incompetence of this administration. It is asking too much of the people.
Susan, we talked
No,
about
Vice
It is
President
asking
Pence.
too much of the people.
Let-
That they would not be equipped with the information they need to help themselves to protect
Susan,
their
the
parents
President-
and
No,
their
I'm
children.
sorry. Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, I'm sorry.
It's fine, I'm Kamala.
No, you're Senator Harris to me.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'd like to
obviously,
get back
very,
to
very
normal.
informal there. isn't
Dr.
it?
Anthony Fauci and other experts say
Weird,
that
huh?
most of the people who can be vaccinated
Yeah, that was
need to
definitely
be
a slip.
vaccinated. But half of Americans now say they wouldn't take a vaccine if it was released now. If the Trump administration
Yeah, they won't take a
approves
vaccine because you guys
before
pushed
or
that
after
you
the
shouldn't
election,
trust the government.
Should Americans
That you shouldn't trust
take
the
it, and would you
vaccine
take it?
methodology.
If the
Oh, well, they're
public
going
health
and doing it too
professionals, if
fast.
Dr. Fauci,
Yeah, so you guys can
if
keep everything
the
locked down, so you guys
doctors
can maintain
tell us that
control,
we
so you
should
can
take
go
it, I'll
and
be
win
the
an
first in line to
election.
take it. Absolutely.
You
But if
guys
Donald
are
Trump
costing
tells us
lives.
that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
Vice President Pence,
Go ahead,
there have been a
don't
lot
take
of
it.
repercussions
I hope
from
that
this
there's,
pandemic. In recent days,
some
the president's
downfall due to
diagnosis
that.
of COVID-19
Let's just
has
say that,
underscored the
as kindly as I
importance
can.
of the job that you hold and that you are seeking. That's our second topic tonight. It's the role of the vice president. One of you will make history on January 20th. You will be the vice president to the oldest president the United States has ever had. Donald Trump will be 74 years old on Inauguration Day. Joe Biden will be 78 years old. That already has raised concerns among some voters, concerns that have been sharpened by President Trump's hospitalization in recent days. Vice President Pence, have you had a conversation?
And then they just rode right
or
over the
reached an
fact that
agreement
Biden's turning 78.
With President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes without interruption.
Well, Susan, thank you, although I would like to go back.
I think we need to move on
well,
to the
thank
issue
you,
of
but I would like to
vice
go back
presidency.
because the reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time, in unheard of time, in less than a year. We have 5 companies in phase 3 clinical trials, and we're right now producing tens of millions of doses. So the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the vaccine emerges during the Trump administration, I think is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives. The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity
I haven't
to
had
save
the opportunity to hear
countless
Pence speak
American
much,
lives.
but
And
Jesus, that was pretty
your
good.
continuous undermining of confidence in a vaccine is it's just unacceptable. And let me also say, the reality is when you talk about failure in this administration, we actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic. It was 2009. The swine flu arrived in the United States. Thankfully, it ended up not being as lethal as the coronavirus. But before the end of the year, when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, not 7.5 million people contracted the swine flu. 60 million Americans contracted the swine flu. If the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus, in 2009, when Joe Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million American lives. His own chief of staff, Ron Klain, would say last year that it was pure luck that they did, quote, everything possible wrong. And we learned from that. They left the strategic national stockpile empty. They left an empty and hollow plan, but we still learned from it. And I think,
and
then they also didn't go and elect quite a few
what we have done.
Judges back into the courts.
Thank you, Vice
Stop
President
undermining
Pence.
confidence in a vaccine.
Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked Vice President Pence, which is, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice President Biden about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, and if you win the election next month, do you think you should?
You can see that smile because she knows that
So let me tell you,
Biden winning really means her winning. Because before the term's out, Biden's not going to be alive. I mean, this is designed for a Kamala presidency. That's literally where this is going. Now, keep in mind, her record shows her that she's one of the most socialist, one of the most progressive, liberal politicians out there, and she's running for
gave birth to me at the age of 25.
ipso facto the highest
Kaiser Hospital in
office
Oakland,
in the land.
California. And,
This is not somebody we
the
want
thought that I'd
in
be
that
sitting here
position.
right now, I know would make her proud, and she must be looking down on this. You know, Joe and I were raised in a very similar way. We were raised with values that are about hard work, about the value and the dignity of public service.
Yeah, but only one of
and
you
about
screwed
the
your way to the
importance
top.
of fighting for the dignity of all people. And I think Joe asked me to serve with him because, you know, I have a career that included being elected the first woman district attorney of San
you got
Francisco,
put in because
where I created models
the Democrat
of
Party
innovation
wanted you in.
for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system. I was elected.
Yeah, once again, the reform that caused the
first,
imprisonment of
woman of color
millions
and black
of
woman
black
to be elected Attorney General of the state of California,
population.
where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States.
And failed at it
second only to
miserably.
the United States Department of Justice.
And by the way, most of
From there, I
these
took on everything
people going to
from
prison were for
transnational
minor
criminal
drug crimes. I mean, these were
organizations to the
nonviolent
big
drug
banks that were
offenders
taking advantage
that
of
went in.
homeowners,
And of
to
course, you know,
for-profit
this
colleges
was during
that
the
were
time
taking
where
advantage of
pot was
veterans.
enough to go and
And
get
then,
you
of course, now I serve
several
in the
years
United
stint
States
in
Senate as
prison.
only the second
And of course,
black
these are the
woman
same
ever
people now
elected
are saying,
to
"Oh,
the
well, we
United
want
States
pot to
Senate. I
be
serve on the Senate
legalized."
Intelligence Committee, where I've
After
been
they
in
had made
regular
legislation that
receipt
directly
of classified
made it
information about
a
threats to our
prisonable
nation
offense.
and hotspots around the world. I've traveled the world. I've met with our soldiers in war zones, and I think Joe has asked
Really,
me
when
to
the hell
serve
is
with
that?
him because he knows that we share a purpose which is about lifting up the American people. And after the 4 years that we have seen of Donald Trump unifying our country around our common values and principles.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
So common values
neither
and principles. Okay,
President
so
Trump nor Vice President Biden has released
conservatives
the sort of
do well in
detailed
office
health
when
information
the wealthy
that had
go and vote
become
them
the
in, right?
modern
That's what the
norm
Democrats
until
say.
the 2016 election.
Fine, I'll stand by
and
that.
in recent days, President
The
Trump's
Democrats
doctors
do
have
well
given misleading
when
answers
the
or refused to
poor
answer
vote for
basic
them. So
questions about his
it's
health.
in the
And my
conservatives'
question
better
to each of you in turn
best
is,
interest to have
is
more
this
rich people than it
information
is to have more poor
voters
people. Think about
deserve
that for a
to
minute.
know? Vice
The
President
Democrats
Pence, would
want
you
more
like to go
poor
first?
people because poor people,
Well, Susan,
in
thank
general,
you.
vote for them because they are on
And
public
let
subsidies.
me say,
Rich
on behalf
people
of the
go
President
and
and the
pay
First
more
Lady,
taxes. They go and
how moved we've all
tend
been
to want to watch their pocketbooks a lot
outpouring of
more because they're worried about the
prayers
government
and
taking those
concern
taxes out
for the
and
President.
taking their hard-earned
And I
money.
do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and
So,
the concern that have ushered forth
More
for every
conservative
American
conservative
impacted
values equal more
by the
rich people.
coronavirus.
Liberal values
But the
equal
care
more
the
poor
President
people.
received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors, was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way will continue. The American people have a right to know about the health and well-being of their president, and will continue to do that. But I'm just extremely grateful and was more than a little moved by the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions of genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you, as I did on that phone call, on the historic nature of your nomination.
Thank you.
I never expected to be on this stage 4 years ago, so I know the feeling. But the reality is we've got an election before the American people in the midst of this challenging year. And the stakes have never been higher, but I think the choice has never been clear.
I want to give Senator Harris a chance to
So they're leaving it with a compliment to the other side.
Do
Nice,
voters
yeah,
have
good,
a right
good
to know
moderation.
more detailed health information about presidential candidates, and especially about presidents,
So
especially
saying something
when they're
nice doesn't
facing
get you
some kind of
anywhere
challenge?
Absolutely, and that's why
this
Joe
late
Biden
in the
has
game.
been so incredibly transparent, and certainly by contrast, the president has not. Both in terms of
And
health
notice that
records,
she's
but
using it
also
as a
let's look at taxes.
direct reason to go after
We
blood.
now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000?" And it was like, no, $750.
Well, once again, you got to remember that he
We
became
now know
president during
Donald
that period of
Trump
time. When you
owns
start looking at that and
is
having to
in
go and
debt
separate the corporation
for
from himself,
$400 million.
he took a pay
And
loss
just so
becoming
everyone is
president.
clear,
In fact,
when
he's one
we
of the
say
few
in
people
debt,
in
it
American
means you
history
owe
that's
money
taken
to
a loss being
somebody.
president. So
And it'd
yeah,
be
I
really
bet you he
good
only
to know
paid that much in
who the
taxes, considering
president
the
of the
fact that he
United
had all the
States, the
write-offs of having to
commander-in-chief,
go and pull himself
owes
out of his
money to,
businesses
because the
and the amount of
American
money
people
that
have a
went
right
out the
to
door
know
for it.
what is influencing
What the hell is wrong
the
with that?
president's
Biden does the
decisions?
same
And is
thing,
he
frankly.
making
He
those
goes and takes
decisions on
advantage
the
of
best
the
interest of the
tax code.
American
In fact,
people, of
you
you,
guys, the Democrats, are the
or
ones that wrote that into the
self-interest?
tax code
So,
that
Susan, I'm glad you asked
Trump
about
takes advantage of.
transparency,
So
because it has to be across
let's
the board.
not
Joe has
let's
been
not jump down
incredibly
something that
transparent
actually doesn't
over
mean a
many,
damn thing.
many years. The one thing we all know about Joe, he puts it all out there. He is honest. He is forthright. But
He is
Donald
brain
Trump, on the
damaged.
other hand,
Sue.
has been
Thank-
about covering up everything.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I want to give you a chance to respond, Vice President.
Well, look, I respect the fact that Joe Biden spent 47 years in public life. I respect your public
Yeah, when they're
service
talking
as
about the
well.
swamp,
Thank you.
that's what they're talking
American
about.
people have a
Lifelong
president
politicians.
who's a
Remember,
businessman,
politicians were initially designed
job
to be
creator,
working
who's paid
people. They were
tens
supposed
of
to be
millions
of the
of
people. They were
dollars
supposed
in
to be people
taxes,
coming in from a work
payroll
life
taxes,
and then
property
doing so as a
taxes.
civic
He's
duty to
created
be a
tens of
politician.
thousands
Not
of
people who are
American jobs.
literally going in there
And the
making their
president said
entire
those
life's
public
purpose and
reports
their
are
entire life's
not
living.
accurate.
He's a very, very wealthy
And the
man
president's
due to his
also
47
released
years.
literally stacks of financial disclosures. The American
Why in
people
God's
can
name would we want to give him more
review
time? Anything
just
that he
as
could have
the
done,
law
he should have
allows.
done
But
already.
The
You
distinction
think it's going to
here
be
is
something
that
different? He
Joe
magically is going to
Biden,
become president. It's going to
47
be
years
poof.
in
It's entirely
public
different.
service compared to President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you,
and
Vice
turned
President.
this economy around by cutting
And they cut him-
taxes,
cut him
rolling
off
back
again.
regulations,
They're saying
Thank you,
he's
thank you,
pro
Vice
Trump.
President.
energy, fighting for free and fair trade, and all
Thank-
of that's
thank you,
on the
Vice
line
President.
if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
You know, that's a good
the White
segue into our third
great
topic,
segue.
which is about the economy. This has
Did you
been
catch
another
that?
aspect
A great
of life for
segue.
Americans. It's
Oh,
been so
no, this hasn't been
affected
shared with
by this
anybody. No, we haven't let
coronavirus.
out
We have a
the
jobs
questions we're going to have.
crisis
Oh, no, it's a
brewing.
great segue because she
On
knows where
Friday,
the hell
we
it's
learned
going.
that the unemployment
Did anybody
rate
else catch
declined
that?
to 7.9% in September, but the job growth had stalled, and that was before the latest round of layoffs and furloughs in the airline industry at Disney and elsewhere. Hundreds of thousands of discouraged
Disney
workers
because
have
the state of
stopped looking for
California
work.
did not
Nearly
reopen.
11 million jobs that existed
Once again,
at the beginning of the
Democrat
year
run.
haven't been replaced. Those hardest hit include Latinos, blacks, and women. Senator Harris, the Biden-Harris campaign has proposed new programs to boost the economy, and you would pay for that new spending by raising $4 trillion in taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations. Some economists warn that could curb entrepreneurial ventures that fuel growth and create jobs. Would raising taxes put the recovery at risk? And you have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
Thank you. On the issue of the economy, I think there couldn't be a more fundamental difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
A job creator and a job killer.
Joe Biden believes you measure the health and the strength of America's economy based on the health and the strength of the American worker and the American family. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing, which is why he
Or how many
passed
more
the
rich
tax
people are being
bill
made.
benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America.
And let us not
leading
forget she
to
is one of those 1%.
a
She's literally
$2 trillion
talking about
deficit
herself.
that the American people are going to have to pay for. On day one, Joe Biden will repeal that tax bill. He'll get rid of it. And what he'll do with the money is invest it in the American people. And through a plan that
So
is about
investing
in
money
infrastructure,
from the American
something
people
that
into the
Donald
American
Trump said
people. In
he
other
would do.
words,
I remember hearing about
they're
some infrastructure
moving
week.
the
I don't
wealth
think it
around
ever
again,
happened.
aren't they?
But
It's
Joe Biden will do
another
that. He'll
reason to
invest
go
in
and take
infrastructure.
money
It's
from
about
those that have
upgrading our
and give it to
roads and
those that
bridges,
haven't.
but also
Make
investing
them
in clean
more
energy
and more
and
needed
renewable
onto
energy.
the
Joe is
public
going to
tit.
invest
Yeah.
that money
Fantastic,
in what we need to
fantastic
do
policy.
around innovation.
Or we can make more
there
rich
was a
people.
time when our country believed in science, and invested
Yeah, the
in
science that you just
research
said you
and
wouldn't take the
development
vaccine from.
so that we were an innovation leader
Unless
on the
it comes
globe.
out when they're
Joe Biden will use that
Right.
money to invest
Right.
in education. So, for example, for folks who want to go to a 2-year community college, it will be free. If you come from a family
You mean
that
the
makes
schools
less than
that we can't currently go to because you guys got 'em
you'll go to a
closed.
public university for free. And across the board, we'll make sure that if you have student loan debt, it's cut by $10,000. That's how Joe Biden thinks about the economy.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
how Joe
about
Biden thinks about the
investing
economy.
in
So they think
people
about the
of our
economy by
country,
trying to go
as
and buy
opposed
their
to passing
votes.
a tax bill.
Let this be
which
clear. I
had
mean,
the
that's
benefit
what this
of letting
is.
American corporations go
Making more people
offshore
reliant
to do
on the
their
government
business.
instead of allowing them to be reliant
Thank
on
you,
themselves.
Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, your administration has been predicting a rapid and robust recovery. But
And it
the
has
latest
been.
economic report suggests that's not happening.
Bullshit.
Should
If you look at the
Americans
numbers,
be braced
it's
for an
we're
economic
at
comeback that is gonna
9%
take not
currently. That's
months,
better than
but
it
a
was
year
when
or more?
Obama
You have
was
2
in
minutes to
office.
answer uninterrupted.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. It's when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax and spend and regulate and bail our way back to a growing economy. President Trump cut taxes across the board.
Got the government the hell out of the way.
Despite what, Senator Harris says, the average American family of 4 had $2,000 in savings in taxes. And with the rise in wages that occurred, most predominantly for blue-collar, hardworking Americans, the average household for a family of 4 increased by $4,000 following President Trump's tax cuts. But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes. It's really remarkable to think, Susan. I mean, right
That was
after
perfect.
a time where we're going through a pandemic that lost 22 million jobs at the height. We've already added back 11.6 million jobs because we had a president who
In
cut
a
taxes,
hugely
rolled back
short amount of
regulation,
time. I mean, could you
unleashed
imagine if the
American
Great
energy,
Depression
fought
had
for
ended
free
that
and fair
fast?
trade, and secured $4 trillion
we had
from
the
the
loss
Congress of the
of
United
workers
States to
as
give
great
direct
as the Great
payments to
Depression was.
families, save
We
50
didn't take
million
us
jobs through the Paycheck
years and years and
Protection
years to bring
Program.
it back
We
because we didn't
literally
have a
spared
president giving
no
out shovel-ready
expense to help
jobs
the
like they
American
did
people
during
and
the
the
Great
American
Depression.
worker through
We had a
this.
president just saying,
Joe
get
Biden
the
and
hell out of the
Kamala
way.
Harris want to raise taxes. They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which
This
you
is
were one of
true.
the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate.
Which is really a
They
socialist
want to
mandate.
abolish fossil fuels.
I've covered that earlier.
And ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands
And would
of
make us
American
non-energy
jobs all
independent
across
again.
the
Once again, I
heartland.
also
And
showed
Joe
why that's
Biden wants
important.
to go back to the economic surrender to China, that when we took office, half of our international trade deficit was with China alone. And Joe Biden wants to repeal all of the tariffs that President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth
Thank you,
and
sir.
opportunity,
Thank you,
4
Vice
more years of President Donald Trump. 2021
Thank
is
you,
going
Vice
to be the
President
biggest
Pence.
economic year in the history of this country.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
That was a good answer.
Senator Harris.
By the way, I want to
Well,
thank
I mean, we
Newsies
saw
again
enough
for
of it in
allowing us
last
to tap
week's
into their
debate, but I think
feed.
this is supposed to be a debate
You
based
know,
on fact
they're
and
an
truth.
online
And the truth
service.
and
They
the
go
fact
and do
is, Joe Biden has been very
a lot
clear.
of cross
He will not raise
platforms.
taxes on anybody
If
who
we
makes
tap
less
into
than
CNN's feeds,
$400,000 a year.
Repeal the Trump
we're very,
tax
very
cut.
likely
Mr.
to
Vice
get
President, I'm
demonetized.
speaking.
So I really
Well,
appreciate
wait,
Newsy
I'm
allowing us
speaking.
to
It'd
tap
be
into
important
their
if you
feed with
said the
us.
truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break every single year. Senator,
that is
that's the math.
absolutely not true. That
Is he
tax
only
bill-
cutting? Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then
Please.
have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, until the moderator cuts you
Joe
off
Biden will not raise
mid-thrust.
taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden is the one who, during the Great Recession, was responsible for the Recovery Act that brought America back. And now the Trump-Pence administration
The Great
wants to
Recession
take
that
credit
lasted a lot longer than it should
when they
have.
ran,
thanks to
when they
their
rode
policies.
the coattails of Joe Biden's success for the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster.
Okay, so by that
But Joe
same
Biden,
book,
on the one
then
hand, did
everything
that.
that
On the
happened
other
under
hand, you have
Clinton's
Donald
reign, because
Trump,
that's one that they keep on going
who
back to
has
when we had the
reigned over
balanced budget under
a
Clinton.
recession
All that
that is
came
being
about
compared
because
to the
of
Great Depression.
a
On the one hand,
George
you have
Bush
Joe
being
Biden,
president
who
beforehand.
was responsible with
Can't have it
President
both
Barack
ways.
Obama for the Affordable Care
So
Act.
which one was it?
which
So
brought
either George
healthcare to
Bush
over
was a
20
good
million
president because it allowed
Americans and
Clinton to
protected
have
people
huge
with
economic
pre-existing
growth,
conditions. And what it also did
or Obama was
is it
a bad
saved
president.
those families who otherwise were going
guys tell me.
bankrupt because of hospital bills they could not afford. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's in court right now, trying to get rid of
Thank you, Senator
the Affordable Care Act, which means that
Which
you will
is a
lose
bad
protections
bill.
if you have pre-existing conditions. And this is very important,
And
Susan.
no, during
Yes,
the
and it's-
last
we need
speech,
to
he
give- we
explained
need to give
how
Vice
that was going to
President-
work
just
out.
like he
But
interrupted me, and I'd
to be
like to
truthful,
just
I don't
finish,
understand it
please.
myself, because pre-existing
If
conditions,
you
that
have
means
a
that if you're
pre-existing
sick,
condition,
you can wait
heart
until you're
disease,
sick and then go
diabetes,
to
breast cancer, they're
go and get
coming for you.
insurance. That's a
If you love
bad
someone
policy.
who has a pre-existing
It
condition,
sucks, but it's a bad
Thank you,
they're
policy.
Senator
coming for
Harris.
you. If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage, they're coming for you.
And
Senator
by the way, if
Harris,
you're
thank you.
26, it's
Let
on
me
your
give you a
parents'
chance
coverage.
to
Get off the
respond.
Well, I
fucking
hope we have a
couch
chance
and
to
get a
talk
job.
about healthcare, because Obamacare was a disaster. The American people remember it well. And President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American.
They do.
But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Or at
You
least
yourself
offer
said on
some sort of
multiple
discount on
occasions when
healthcare.
you were running for president that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked at a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper,
they giving
USA
us all
Today,
electric
said
vehicles?
really wasn't that very different from the Green New Deal. More
take a blue
taxes,
Tesla.
more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender to China is a prescription for economic decline. President Trump and I will keep America growing. The V-shaped recovery that's underway right now
And
will
ultimately,
continue with 4 more
economically, we
years
can't
of President
afford
Donald
to,
Trump.
Thank you very,
to not
very
be
much,
energy
Vice
independent.
President Pence. Once again,
So,
you've provided the perfect segue.
You can't
to
imagine
our
the
new
outfall,
topic,
though,
which is
that'll occur
climate
if we end up
change.
going
And
backwards.
Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question
I
to
mean, I'm
you.
talking about full economic
This year, we've
collapse.
seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one,
Jesus, they're
Hurricane
gonna go into
Delta,
the
is now
environmental
threatening
bullshit.
the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter,
No bad
slower,
forestry policy
and more
has.
damaging?
Stopping
You
people
have
from being
2
able to
minutes
go and
and
clear cut the debris that's
Thank you,
fallen
Susan.
because of forestry rules
Well, first, I'm
is
very
what's
proud
caused
of our
these
record on
big
the environment
forest
and on
fires.
conservation. According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded. And our water is among the cleanest in the world. And just a little while ago, the President signed the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks in 100 years.
In fact,
So
you realize you get a
President
whole
Trump has
subset
made
of
a
trees that go and
commitment
use
to
fires to go
conservation
and
to the
cross-pollinate.
Now, with regard to climate change,
If
climate is
forest fires
changing.
weren't that big of a thing in the
the
past,
issue is,
then why
what's
did
the
evolution cause that?
And what do we do about it? President Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. They'd impose the Green New Deal, which would crush American energy, would increase the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy. You know, what's remarkable is
Yeah, Tesla
the
came
United
about in a
States
free
has
market
reduced
economy. Think about that.
CO2 more than the countries that are still in
And by the way,
Paris
they took
Climate
federal
Accord, but
funds
we've
to
done
go
it
and get
through
rolling on
innovation.
that. But you know what they've done that
And
GM
we've
hasn't?
done it through natural gas.
They paid it back.
And fracking, which, Senator, the American people can go look at the record. I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking. And so by creating the kind of American innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires, President Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center, and even Governor Gavin Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard to hurricanes, the National Oceanic Administration tells us that actually as difficult as they are,
Thank you, Vice President.
there are no more hurricanes today than
Thank
there
you.
were
They're trying to
100
interrupt them
years
because
ago.
it's a
Thank
hard
you.
reality.
But many of the climate alarmists
President Pence,
use
I'm sorry, your time
hurricanes
is up.
and wildfires to try and
Thank
sell
you,
the
Vice
bill of
President.
goods
Shut
of
up.
a Green New Deal And President Trump and I are going to always put
Thank you,
American
Vice
jobs and
President
American
Pence.
workers first.
Senator Harris, as the
That was a
Vice
good
President
answer.
mentioned, you co-sponsored the Green New Deal in Congress. But Vice President Biden said in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly
And I
would be
pointed
the
that out in one
stance
of my
of a
videos.
Biden-Harris administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes
Which is a
uninterrupted.
socialist bill.
Sure.
It'll
So, first
allow
of all, I
socialism
will repeat,
by edict.
and the American
it's
people
it's
know
a green
that
plan,
Joe
but if you
Biden
read it, it has a
will
lot.
not
It's only
ban
8
fracking.
pages. I mean, I
That
encourage
is a
anybody to go out and
fact.
read it. It has
That
a
is
lot
a
to do
fact.
with social
I will
inequities and
that Joe Biden
this
has
language
been
that
very
suggests
clear
that
he
it's there
thinks
simply to
about
go and take
growing
money from
jobs, which
the
is
bad
why
white
he will
man
not
and give it to
increase
the good,
taxes for
literally
anyone who
anybody
makes
else.
less than $400,000 a year. Joe Biden's economic plan, Moody's, which is a reputable Wall Street firm, has said will create 7 million more jobs than Donald Trump.
Are these the same
And
reputable
part of
firms
those
that
jobs that will
went
be
and caused
created
the
by Joe
banking
Biden
collapse?
are going to be about clean energy
thought
and
there.
renewable energy. Because you see, Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California. Joe sees what is happening
Burning
on the
because
Gulf
your
states,
people lit it
which are being
on
battered by
fire.
storms. Joe has seen and talked with the farmers in Iowa whose entire crops have been destroyed because of floods. And so Joe believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the committee that's
But what does all
responsible for
this
the
have to do with
environment.
the
Do you know
Green New
this
Deal?
administration took the word science off the
Keep
website
asking that to yourself.
and then took the phrase climate change off the website? We have seen a pattern with this administration, which is they don't believe in science. And Joe's plan
Once again,
is
says
about
the person
saying
who's
we're gonna
unwilling to
deal
take
with
a
it, but
vaccine.
we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question was, you know, the science is telling us this, you know what Donald Trump said? Science doesn't know. So let's talk about who is prepared to lead our country over the course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat.
You are people
to
that
us
had
as
been
human
running the
beings.
country up
Joe
until
is
Trump,
about
and you
saying
guys
we're
did
gonna
a
invest
shitty
that in
job
renewable
with it.
energy. It's going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We will achieve net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035. Joe has a plan. This has been a lot of talk from the Trump administration, and really it has been to go backward instead of forward. We will also re-enter the climate agreement with pride.
Senator Harris just said that climate change is an existential threat. Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science. But once again, Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of 4 across America.
Yeah, I mean, the
with regard to
reality
banning
on the
fracking, I just
environment,
recommend
yes, it
people
is changing. Once
Look
again,
at the record. You yourself
at one point in
said
time, we were in
repeatedly that you would ban fracking. You
warmer
were the
period.
first
That's what allowed
Senate
the dinosaurs.
co-sponsor of
We
the
went
Green
into
New
a
Deal.
cooling period.
And while Joe
Now we're coming
Biden
out
denied
of a
the
cooling
Green New
period.
Deal,
Once again,
Susan, thank
dark
you
ages
for
were
pointing
colder.
out
There's a reason why they were
the
the
Green
dark
New Deal
ages.
is
There was
on their
less
campaign
sunlight, probably
website.
due to
And as USA
volcanoes
Today said,
and
it's
eruptions still
essentially the
occurring.
same
Nonetheless,
plan as you co-sponsored
colder.
with AOC.
We are now
when she submitted
getting
it in the
warmer,
Senate.
and we're
And
going
you
to
just heard the
continue
senator
to
say
get
that she's going
warmer.
to resubmit America to the
It's a
Paris Climate
constantly
Accord.
changing
Look,
thing.
The American
At some point in
people
time,
have
it'll go back the other
always
direction, and
cherished
then they'll
our
be freaking out
environment.
due
We'll
to
continue
global
to
cooling
cherish
like
it.
they
We've
were in
made
the
great
80s.
progress
Does anybody else remember that? They used
reducing
to come out and go,
CO2 emissions
go over,
through
it's going to be
American
global
innovation and the
cooling.
development of natural gas through fracking. We don't need a massive $2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American businesses and American families.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us
Thank
to
you, Vice
retrofit
President.
4 million
Thank you, Vice
American
President.
He did good by bringing it back
buildings.
around to the Green New Deal.
It makes
I
no
have to give him
sense.
that.
It will cost jobs. President Trump
Thank
is
you,
going to
Vice
put
President.
America first. He's going to put jobs first, and we're going to take care of our environment and follow the science.
Thank
But,
you, Vice
you know,
President.
on the issue of jobs,
Senator Harris.
let's talk about that. The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China. You lost that trade war.
No,
you
we
lost
didn't.
it.
No,
What
we're
ended up
bringing
happening
jobs back here. They're
Is
quite,
because
there's
of
quite
a
a few.
so-called trade war with China,
And in fact, okay, my own business, our own business, we went from using a company that was using mostly Chinese parts to a company using American parts because the cost then all of a sudden worked out. Now, it costs a little bit in the first go-around, but it made it so that we are now using American parts and made it so that the American companies could actually go and compete with coming across it. Now, I'm not a big fan of tariffs in general. It's not a good policy I tend to stand by.
And the American people know what I'm talking about.
It made jobs.
I think about 20-year-olds. You know, we have a 20-year-old, a 20-something-year-old who are coming out of high school and college right now, and you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me? We're looking at people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent by the end of the month. Almost half of American renters are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month.
And that's because in the liberal areas, rent has gone up and up, probably because of taxes.
And the failure of
because then you've got the landlords having to go pay property taxes that have gone absolutely
Vice President Pence, let me give just 15 seconds to respond, because then I want to move on to
I'd love to respond.
There's a result to that.
Lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China over the last several decades. And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. When Joe Biden was vice president, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs, and President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we needed a magic wand to bring them back. In our first 3 years after we cut taxes, roll back regulation,
and then they're cutting them off mid-sentence again.
This administration saw 500,000 manufacturing jobs created.
Exactly the minute he starts getting on a roll that's
bring our nation through,
pro the American people, truly pro the American people, man, they want to cut them off the knees.
Paris Climate Accord, it's going to kill jobs this time, just like it killed jobs.
I just need to respond very briefly,
15 seconds, and then we'll move on.
Thank you. Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about China. We have
socializing
we have no more complicated
the American auto industry
foreign relationship than the one
I'm not sure it saved it. They went and bought out GM and sold it out part and parcel off to foreign entities.
Potential partner in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight,
which is why now we have the Chinese making Hummer. Anybody else follow that? So Hummer will now be made by the Chinese.
Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries, enemies? You have 2 minutes.
Yes.
Well, before I leave that, let me speak to voting records if I can. You know, everybody knows
he's having to do this because they keep cutting him off at the knees.
Thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border. President Trump fought to renegotiate NAFTA. And the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land.
Now watch, I'll cut him off right there.
American people deserve to know Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs. And the American people deserve to know that. Is probably why Newsweek magazine said that Kamala Harris was the most liberal member of the United States Senate in 2019, more liberal than Bernie Sanders, more liberal than any of the others in the United States Senate. So now with regard to China, look, Susan, first and foremost, China is to blame for the coronavirus. And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear, made it clear again today. China and the World Health Organization did not play straight with the American people. They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February.
We had tried to send scientists over there, over to Wuhan.
In dealing with China,
the Wuhan scientists wanted our people to come over, and the Chinese government
taking advantage of America
basically said, no, you guys aren't allowed to come over.
In the wake of Joe Biden's cheerleading for China, President Trump made that decision before the end of January to suspend all travel from China. And again, the American people deserve to know Joe Biden opposed President Trump's decision to suspend all
Once
travel.
again, and same
from
time
China.
Nancy Pelosi's
He
going
said
down
it
to
was
Chinatown
hysterical.
saying,
He said
come
it
on
was
Thank you, Vice
down.
President.
Hey, it's a good old
President
time
Trump
down
has
here.
said
Don't
it
need
was
masks.
China, we're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold
Vice President
China
Pence.
accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus.
Thank you. Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had with getting rid of whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and Vice President Biden. For example,
When the achievement
they
stands in the
created
way of
within
the
the White
American
House
people, the American
an office
economy, and
that
the
basically was
Constitution,
responsible
I
for
think those are
monitoring
damn good
pandemics.
reasons to go and throw that
they
shit
got
away.
away, they got rid of it.
Not true.
There was a team of disease experts that President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled them out. We now are looking at 210,000 Americans who have lost their lives. Let's look at the job situation. We mentioned before the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for
300
goods
manufacturing
because
jobs?
of that failed
Hell, that wasn't bad, was
war
it?
that they called it. And let's talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm,
No, the reality
has
is we wouldn't
done
be
an
talking about this
analysis
if the coronavirus didn't
that
exist,
shows
because
that
up until
leaders of
last
all of
year,
our
the
formerly
economy
allied
was
countries
strong.
have now
You literally had
decided
a
that they hold
unemployment
in
rate of
greater
zero
esteem and
because
respect.
you had
Xi
more people
Jinping,
looking for jobs than there were
the
people
head
that
of the
were,
Chinese
more
Communist
companies
Party,
looking
than they
for
do
employees
Donald
than you had
Trump,
people looking for
the President
jobs.
of the United States, the
So
Commander-in-Chief
the
of the
shutdown
United States.
that was
This is
caused
where
by
we
this
are
virus, it
today.
was caused by China, and it
Because
was
of a
propagated by
failure of
Democrat
leadership by this administration.
governors and states to go and keep things farther
Senator
down
Harris,
and
we've
trying to
seen
keep the
changes
economy
in
shut
the-
down in order
in
to
the
go
role of the
benefit
United
this
States in terms of global
election.
leadership
I mean, we've
over the
got
past
this
4
state's going
years.
saying, "Oh, we'll
And of course,
reopen
times do
on
change.
November 6th. We'll
What's your
reopen the schools
definition?
November 9th."
We've seen strains with China,
after
of course,
the election,
as the Vice President
because they're so
mentioned.
sure that they
We've seen
are going
strains
to
with
have
our
a
traditional
Biden
allies
presidency
in
that
NATO
they can
and
then go
elsewhere.
and
What
go,
is
well,
your
see,
definition
Biden
of the
got
role
it
of
open
American
for us.
leadership in 2020?
So, Joe is, I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships. And so we know this in our personal and professional relationships.
Until you have
gotta
a group
keep your
of
word to your
people
friends.
from a foreign nation
Gotta be
that is
loyal to your
absolutely
friends.
hell-bent
People who've stood
on
with you,
destroying you,
gotta stand
which
with them.
I frankly think is what China
gotta
has
know
done.
who your adversaries
But you got
are
the same problem when
and
it
keep them in
comes to a lot of the Muslim countries
what we have seen
are
with
so
Donald Trump
anti-us. What kind of
is that
personal
he
relationship
has
are you going to go and
betrayed
develop
our
without
friends
kowtowing directly to them? Same thing with Korea.
Embraced
Kim Jong
dictators
Il
around
is
the world.
absolutely
Let's take, for
anti-American
example,
to
Russia.
the nth degree.
So,
So being
Russia,
agreeable
I
to
serve
him
on the
means
Intelligence
being the
Committee
same.
of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI,
The interference that they're
said the
talking
same.
about is a minute
But
amount of
Donald
money
Trump,
spent
the
into
Commander-in-Chief of the
Facebook.
United States of America,
There's been
the first to take the word
more
of
money
Vladimir
spent
Putin
into
over
Facebook
the
by
word of the
foreign
American
entities
Intelligence Community.
propagated by the Democrat Party,
You look at our friends
like
at NATO.
tenfold versus what happened for
He's walked away from
the
agreements.
Republicans.
You can look at the Iran nuclear
you want to go
deal,
talk about
which now has put us in
Russian
a position
collusion. Let's take a look at Biden
where we are
Biden's
less
family being
safe
paid off
because they are building
directly
up
by the
what
Russians.
might end up being a
I mean,
significant
they're getting
nuclear
money directly from them.
arsenal. We were in that
it's
deal,
insane
guys.
that
We
we're
were in
going
the Iran nuclear
and-
deal
and
with
bringing
friends,
this
with
up. They
allies
wanna
around
keep
the
beating the
country.
drum for
And
it, and
because
it's
of
stuff that's
Donald
absolutely
Trump's
false.
unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan, it's about relationships. And the thing that has always
Except he
been part
literally
of the
brought
strength of
peace
our
to the Middle
nation,
East.
in addition to our great military,
It made us
has been
less
that we
safe. How
keep
so?
our
We now
word.
have a
But
pact
Donald
of Middle
Trump
Eastern
doesn't
countries who are
understand that,
at
because
peace.
he doesn't
I
understand
think peace in
what
the
it
world
means to
makes
be
us
honest.
that much safer.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence,
But
let me
there's
give you
no
a chance
peace
to
in our country
respond.
right
Well,
now.
thank you.
There is no peace in our
President
country
Trump
right now.
kept
That's
his
true.
word
There
when
is
we
no
moved the
peace in our
American
country right
embassy
now.
to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel.
In fact, there
When
it
Joe
goes
Biden
towards
was
Middle
vice
East.
president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding. NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia-Pacific, and we've stood strong against those who would do us harm. You know, when President Trump came into office,
Because he's a
ISIS
businessman who
had
knows how to
captured an
wheel and deal.
area of the Middle East the size of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military, and our armed forces destroyed the ISIS caliphate and took down their leader, al-Baghdadi, without one American casualty. Al-Baghdadi was responsible for the death of thousands. But notably, America's hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller, her parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, two of the ISIS killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed on the battlefield along with the other Beetle. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Mueller. It breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days early. And her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice
Look, we
President.
destroyed the ISIS caliphate. And
See you
we
once
talk
again.
about
Pro-Trump. Oh, we got to
the
interrupt him.
nuclear deal. I mean, the last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor
Thank you, Vice
of
President
terrorism.
Pence.
President Donald Trump got us out of the deal.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And when Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad
Thank you,
to do
Vice President
harm
Pence.
to Americans, President Donald Trump took
Thank you,
him
Vice
out.
President Pence.
And America is safer. Our allies are safer. And the American
wanted
people
to say you're
know
welcome.
President Donald Trump will never
Thank you, Vice President
take
Pence.
action.
I would like to give Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length, because of course there are other topics we want to talk
But
about.
I would like equal time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful, and it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way. But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there. So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a
I'll
counter
be right back, guys.
strike
I'm going to go grab a drink
on
of
our
water.
troops in Iraq. And they suffered serious brain injuries. And do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headaches. And this is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men who are serving in our military as suckers and losers. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of our fallen heroes and said, what's in it for them? Because of course, you know, he only thinks about what's in it for him. Let's take what he said about John McCain, a great American hero. And Donald Trump says he doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war. And this is very important when you want to talk about who is the current commander-in-chief and what they care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of American soldiers. And you know what a bounty is? It's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that.
Thank
Joe
you.
Biden would, but Joe Biden
Yeah.
would hold Russia to
We'd be at war with
account
Russia.
for any threat to our nation's security or to our troops who are
You know, it's one thing to go and have conversations
for the
with
sake of our
with people. It's
democracy and our
also
safety.
another
Thank you,
conversation
Senator
to have
Harris.
some
This is
couth
such an
about it.
important issue, but we have other important issues as well, and
Susan,
I
I
want to make
respond
sure we
to
have a chance
I really have to
talk about.
respond to that.
I'm-
Look, she has
15 seconds because
Well, I gotta
we're
have
trying
more
to
than
keep.
that. Look.
Well, I'm sorry, but Vice President,
Look,
but you've
I-
had more time than
Look,
she's
the-
had
the
so far.
slanders against President Donald Trump regarding men and women of our armed forces are absurd.
I'm sorry, Vice
My
President
son is
Pence.
a captain in the United
Yes.
States Marine Corps. My son-in-law is deployed in the United States Navy. I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects but reveres all of those who serve in our armed forces, and any suggestion otherwise is ridiculous.
Thank
me
you,
also
Vice
say
President Pence.
the
Vice
American
President Pence,
people deserve-
you know,
Susan,
Vice
the American
President
people
Pence,
deserve
I
to
didn't,
know-
Vice President
There's a
Pence, I did not,
pattern.
excuse
You
me,
can't deny.
Susan, the
I did
American
not
people
create
deserve
the
to know
rules for tonight.
Joe Biden
Your
and Trump-
campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight's
I-
debate with the Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm here to enforce them, which involves moving from one topic to another, giving roughly equal time to both of you,
Go right ahead.
which is what I'm trying very hard to do.
Go right ahead.
So I want to go ahead and move to the next topic, which is an important one, as the last topic was, and that is the Supreme Court. On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris,
Should do a drinking
you'll
game
be
to see
there
how
as
many
a
times
member
they
of the
go and
committee.
bring up
Her confirmation would
what's her
cement
doodle's
the
last
court's
wish.
conservative majority and make it likely open to more abortion
That and how many
restrictions,
times
even to
people says
overturning the landmark
210,000.
Roe v. Wade ruling. Access to abortion would then be up to the
Then
states.
people would die.
Vice President
Well, don't
Pence,
you think
you're
access
the
to
former
abortion should be
governor
a
of
state's
Indiana.
right? I mean,
if Roe v. Wade is
yeah,
overturned,
I was going to say Roe v. Wade.
what would you want Indiana to do? Would
The
you
decision
want
got made by
to
Roe v.
ban
Wade, and it's
all
never ever
abortions?
come back
You have
up.
2
I mean, they've
minutes,
never actually
uninterrupted.
gone
Well,
over
thank
it
you
again.
for the question, but I'll use a little
It's
bit of
taken
my
it
time
away
to
from
respond
states
that
to
very
go and
important
make their own
issue before.
decisions. It's taken away from the
American
American
people deserve to
voting
know.
populace in order to go
Qasem
make their own
Soleimani, the
decisions.
Iranian general, was responsible for the death of hundreds of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate, and Qasem Soleimani is gone. But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized the decision to take out Qasem Soleimani. It's really inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden, it's explainable. Because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. It's absolutely essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service members, and that's what you have in President Donald Trump. Now, with regard to the Supreme Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic about the opportunity to see Judge Amy Coney Barrett become Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Now, she's a brilliant woman, and she will bring a lifetime of experience and a sizable American family to the Supreme Court of the United States. And our hope is, in the hearing next week, unlike Justice Kavanaugh received...
You know, the funny part is they were
we hope she
watching
gets a fair
CNN, and they were talking
hearing.
about
And we
how she
particularly
couldn't
hope that
possibly
we don't see
be
the kind of
unbiased
attack
because she was
on her
Catholic.
Christian faith that we saw before.
You know, JFK was Catholic.
Democrat chairman of the
And before he got
Judiciary
voted
Committee
in, there was a lot of conversation as to whether or
when
not a Catholic
Judge
should be
Barrett was
voted in.
being confirmed for the Court of Appeals.
It's crazy that we
concern
have to
that
keep
the
having this
dogma of
conversation
her
about
faith lived loudly in
religion
her.
when it comes
Dick
to
Durbin of Illinois
politics
said
and
that
it comes
was
to
a
court
concern.
appointments.
Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees.
You're
you
allowed to be
actually
religious to whatever
attacked
faith you
because
have
they were a member
or
of the
don't
Catholic
have.
Knights of Columbus.
Why is this a conversation
Just because
that's
the Knights of
being brought
Columbus
up?
holds pro-life views and
Thank you.
pro-marriage views.
Thank you, Vice President
So
Pence. Your
my
time
hope
is
is
In
up.
fact, that's
when
what
the
he's bringing
hearing
up right
takes
now. The Knights
place,
of Columbus
Thank
is
you,
a
Vice
Catholic
President Pence.
that
organization.
Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected,
Thank you,
treated
Vice President
respectfully,
Pence.
voted and confirmed
Thank
to the
you.
Supreme Court of the United States.
Senator Harris, you're the senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel
To which she
question
slept
the one
into
I
the
posed
position of.
to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion?
It'd be a
And
states'
you
right
have
issue. That'd
2
be
minutes
if they wanted to do it, so
uninterrupted.
be it.
Thank you, Susan. First of all, Joe Biden and I are both people of faith, and it's insulting to suggest that we would knock anyone for their faith. And in fact, Joe,
You guys have.
if elected, will be only the second practicing Catholic as President of the United
The
States.
other one being JFK.
On the issue of this nomination, Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27 days before the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And, you know, before, when this conversation has come up, you know, it's been about election year or election time. We're literally in an election. Over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting right now. And so Joe has been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body.
If this doesn't happen, they're going to go and stack the courts to go and make sure that
Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before
that they can go and have
it's the
more
Affordable Care Act.
Supreme Court justices
literally
sitting in there
the midst of a public health pandemic.
Basically vote on their side of it.
Over
They want to go and change.
210,000 people have died,
there you go.
and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition
literally
because
change the way that we
you
have
contracted the virus.
our weights and measures for
Donald Trump is in
the
court right now
president.
trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
It would be scary if these
And I
guys
said
get
it
in,
before, and
because
it bears
if they
repeating.
go and do that, it's going to go
This
and
that there will be
for
no
generations,
more
it's going to go in
if they win
and weigh it towards the Democrat Party. It's going to go and take away American freedoms. It's going to go and take away
over 20 million people will lose your coverage.
civil liberties truly by
It means that if you're
the purpose
under the age
of
26,
getting what they want.
you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore.
Once again, if you're 26,
the contrast couldn't
all
be
you
more
26-year-olds that are
clear. They're
watching,
trying to get
if
rid
you're
of the
on
Affordable Care Act,
your parents'
Joe
couch
Biden is
right
saying,
now
let's
watching
expand
this,
coverage. Let's give
and
you
you're
a
on their
choice
medical
of a public
coverage,
option or private coverage.
move out,
Let's bring down
get a
premium
job.
premiums.
Thank you, Senator
Let's
Harris.
lower Medicare eligibility to 60.
Thank you, Senator.
That's true leadership.
You mentioned earlier, Vice President Pence, that the president was committed to maintaining protections for people with pre-existing conditions. But you do have this court case that you are supporting, your administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care Act. The president says, President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that. And that was one of the toughest nuts to crack.
The best thing you can do for medicine is go and open up to the free market. What I mean by that is make it so that your insurance coverage isn't state localized,
Americans
that
with
it can be
pre-existing
across
conditions
the
have
entire
access to
nation.
affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down.
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. And this is another one of those cases where there's such a dramatic contrast. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth.
And that's the key there,
Late-term
taxpayer
abortion. They want to
funding.
increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America.
Now,
Now, for
Planned
our part,
Parenthood
I
was
would never
started by
presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett
member of the
would rule
progressive
on the
movement who
Supreme
believed in
Court
eugenics.
of the
So
United
the intent
States,
of
but,
Planned Parenthood
we'll continue to
was
stand
to go
strong for the right
and
to life.
kill as
When
many
you
or
speak
sterilize
about
as many
the Supreme Court,
unwanteds
though, I think the
as they
American people
possibly
really
could
deserve an
for
answer, Senator Harris.
the
Are
genetic
you and Joe
superiority
Biden
of the
gonna
American
pack the court
population. So
if Judge Amy
all
Coney
you people
Barrett
who
is
absolutely
confirmed?
love Planned Parenthood,
I mean,
stand by
there have been
Planned
29
Parenthood,
vacancies
Planned
on the Supreme
Parenthood,
Court
give
during
money to them. They were
presidential
based
election years, from
off
George
of
Washington to Barack
the
Obama.
concept of eugenics.
Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9
was just
seats for
talking about that.
150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed at the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
I'm so glad we went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In 1864...
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
No, Mr.
Yes,
Vice President, I'm
please.
speaking. I'm speaking. Okay. In 1864, one of the, I think, political heroes, certainly of the president, I assume of you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham
He was
Lincoln
Republican.
was up for re-election. And it was 27 days before the election. And a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And then that person.
Since then,
can
there's
select
been
who
so
will
many
serve
other
for a
times where it's
lifetime
been the
on the
other
highest
table
court
and they
of our
voted somebody
land.
in.
And so Joe and I are very clear.
It makes
The
for a
American
nice
people
story,
are
but the
voting
reality
right
is
now.
that it's a
And it should be
constitutional
their decision
issue for the president.
about
He
who
is
will
required to go
serve on
and,
this most
and
important
find somebody
body
to go and
for
fill
a
that
lifetime.
position. To do so would
Thank
be
you.
a dereliction
Senator
of duty,
Harris.
truly.
Susan are voting right
So,
now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden
I know
are
that
gonna
they want to have it
pack
their
the
way, but
Supreme
there's no
Court
two ways about it.
if you don't get your way in this nomination.
Let's talk about packing.
You once
Come
again
on.
gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you
the
now.
American people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court if they somehow win this election. Men and
Mr.
women,
Vice President,
I got to
I
tell you,
think
people across this country, if you cherish our Supreme Court, if you cherish the separation of powers, you need to reject the Biden-Harris ticket. Come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump, and we'll stand by that separation of powers in a 9-seat Supreme Court.
Yeah,
Thank
let's
you.
talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the
Please.
fact. Yeah, I'm about to. So, the
Man, I really
Trump-Pence
don't like her.
administration has been.
I hope
'cause
the
sit
American
on the
people are
Senate
watching this and
Judiciary
going, wow,
Committee,
she's
Susan, as
kind
you
of
mentioned.
a
And I've
CUNT,
witnessed
you know what I mean?
the appointments
do you
for
really want this
lifetime
person
appointments
to be,
to the federal courts,
frankly, she
district
will
courts,
end up being
courts of
president.
appeal.
Do you really want this
People
person
who
president?
are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by,
Could you imagine
by legal
other
professional
countries dealing
organizations
with
and
her?
found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black?
Did you
This
know
is
that
what
your black
they've been
president
doing. You want
didn't
to talk about
appoint
packing
people?
a court? Let's have that discussion.
That
All right,
he left
thank you, Senator.
a
Let's
huge
go on
amount of
and talk
vacancies
about
in the court?
issue of racial justice.
You gotta have
want
it
the
both
record to
ways.
reflect she never answered the question. So I think
Thank
maybe
you.
the next debate, Joe Biden will answer the
Thank
question.
you,
But I think
thank
the
you.
American people know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President. In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotics investigation broke into her apartment. The police said
Is
they
it a break-in
identified
if they had a
themselves.
warrant? They had a
Taylor's
no-knock
boyfriend
warrant.
said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to
And
him
he shot
to fire
first.
a shot,
Yeah.
which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment.
They
say
did
they
as
were
they
acting
should
in
have, which is
self-defense.
fired back.
None
Exactly,
of them
it
have
was
been indicted
self-defense.
in connection with her death.
So if her boyfriend
Senator
hadn't
Harris,
shot, she'd
in the
still be
case
alive.
of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't
Justice
believe so.
to
And
what?
I've talked with Breonna's
Justice
mother,
to the
Tamika
cops being
Palmer,
shot at by
and her
a
family.
armed individual
And
through a
her
door.
family
For one, it's
deserves
bad gun
justice. She was a
handling. He's
beautiful
shooting
young woman.
blind. For two,
She had as
he
her
shot
life
at a
goal to
cop.
become a
The
nurse.
cop
and she
shot
wanted to
back.
become an EMT to first learn what's going on.
If he valued
out
the
on
lives of
street,
anybody in that
so she
apartment,
could
he
then
wouldn't have shot. The person who
become
should
a
be on
nurse and
trial
save
here
lives.
for this
And her life
should be
was
the
taken.
boyfriend.
Unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And it brings me to, you know, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer.
Which coincidentally, they found
people
drugs
around
in
our
his system.
country
He went into cardiac arrest. It was found to
every
be
race,
what killed him.
Every age.
It was
of
not strangulation.
every
It was not lack of
Perfect
oxygen.
strangers to each
He
other.
was high as a kite.
Marched.
The drugs
shoulder
caused
to
his blood
shoulder,
pressure to
arm in
spike
arm,
through, and he died
fighting
as subsequent of that drug usage.
for us to finally achieve
Also,
that ideal
coincidentally,
of
he had
equal
COVID,
justice
but
under law.
I wouldn't call that a COVID
And I was
death.
a part
though.
of those peaceful protests. And
What
I
peaceful
believe
protests? They've been
strongly
pretty damned
that,
violent.
first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we
Except you
always
have
must
condoned
fight
violence.
for
So we
the
must fight.
values that we hold dear.
So you're condoning
including the
violence.
fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden
To
and I
achieve
have
your
said on
ideal.
this subject. Look,
mean,
and
come
I'm
on, guys.
a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are bad for good cops. We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that. We will
He was not
require
in a
national
chokehold. He was
registry
not in a carotid,
for police
a
officers who
carotid
break
hold.
the law. We will, on the issue of criminal justice reform, get rid of private prisons and cash bail, and
Thank
we
you.
will decriminalize marijuana, and
Thank you, Senator Harris.
we will expunge
Which
the
you helped
records of those who
decriminalize
have
when
been
you
were a
convicted
prosecutor.
of marijuana. This is
Thank
a
you,
time
Senator
for
Harris.
leadership on a tragic issue
Senator Harris,
of
your time
unarmed
is up.
black people in America. who have
Thank you,
been
Senator
killed.
Harris. Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd.
Yeah,
Justice will
he
be
was
served.
as high as a kite.
But there's also no
And blew up his
excuse for
heart.
the rioting and looting that followed. I mean, it really is astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City.
And River Phoenix did that, but you didn't
Just
see
a
them
few
blaming
weeks
cops
ago,
for
I
it. I
stood
mean, he
at
went and
what
gave himself
used to be
a speedball and died out in front
her
of
salon
Donald, in front of
was burned
Johnny
to the
Depp's
ground
club.
by
But I wouldn't
rioters
call that a
and looters.
police brutality. It was
And-
one has
and
nothing to do
Flora
with the
is
other.
still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist, and that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities, is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want
I'm not the
everyone
only
to
one with
know
flies
who puts
running
on the
around.
uniform of law enforcement every day, that President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. But we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American
Thank you,
neighbors
Vice
and
President.
all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership,
Thank you,
we'll
Vice President.
always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done
Vice
from day
President Pence,
one. and
thank
that is
you.
Yeah,
improve
how
the
you
lives
how
of
you help
African
make better
Americans.
cops is you
Thank you,
allow
Vice
more
President.
money for
Unemployment,
training.
record
You allow
Vice
more
President,
money
your
to
time
make
is
good
up.
Fight
cops,
for school
not
choice
less
for
money
all
to
of our
make
Thank you, Vice
less
I'd like to
good
respond.
cops.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who has personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide.
And who put
I'm
black
the only one on
people
this stage
into
who has
prison
prosecuted the
en
big
masse.
banks for taking advantage of America's homeowners. I am the only one on this stage
Help start
who
legalizing
prosecuted
pedophilia.
for-profit colleges for taking
Just
advantage of
commented
our
on the child
veterans.
sex crimes.
And the reality of this is that we are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
Not true.
it wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And this is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's. He called Mexicans rapists and criminals. He instituted as his first act a Muslim ban.
If an
He, on the issue
illegal
of
Mexican comes
Charlottesville,
over,
where
isn't
people
then
were
that Mexican
peacefully
a criminal?
protesting
Because he violated
the
our
need for
borders.
racial justice, where a young woman
He's
was
literally a
killed.
criminal at
and
that
on
point
the
in
other
time.
side, there were neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs. And Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is who we have as the President of the United States. And America, you deserve better. Joe Biden will be a president who brings our country together
Senator Harris, thank you.
and recognizes the beauty in our diversity and the fact that we
Senator
all
Harris,
have
thank
so
you.
much more in common than what separates us.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan, is that you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did, comments that President Trump and I and others on our side of the aisle make. I mean, Senator Harris conveniently omitted, after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments, he condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly. You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren. His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish. This is a president who respects and cherishes all of the American people.
And
But you
actually
talk
allowed
about
him into
having
his family, if you think
personally
about that. I mean,
prosecuted.
they
I'm glad
run
you
his
brought up your record,
business.
Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA in San Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses
There
than
you
whites
go.
and Hispanics. When you were Attorney
Thank you.
General of California,
Thank you,
you
Vice President.
increased the disproportionate incarceration of
Thank
blacks
you.
in California. You did
And he's
nothing
absolutely
on
right.
criminal
That is-
justice reform
it's
in
a
California.
fact.
You didn't lift
You
a
can look it up.
finger
You
to
can look
pass
at
the
the
first step
statistics on
back
it.
on Capitol Hill. I mean, the reality is your record
Thank
speaks
you,
for
Vice
itself.
President
President
Pence.
Trump and I have fought for criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Vice President
We've fought for
Pence.
educational choice and opportunities for African Americans of all of our
Thank you,
minorities.
sir.
And we'll do it for four.
Thank you. You know, there is no more important issue than the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election
But
itself.
Susan, he attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds because we're running out of
I
time.
appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under
As a model, so
Joe
we need
Biden
to
presidency.
prosecute more
Our-
black people?
Our agenda includes what this administration failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holes.
Thank you.
Not only.
What does
Thank
that
you,
have to
Senator.
do with your
I would like
record?
to go through,
These are points that you made earlier in the hour, and I want to talk about the
Ah,
election
good
itself.
job,
before we-
moderator.
but I want to talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record, which includes I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time. We were the first to initiate a
So you could
requirement that
catch
there would
cops,
be a training for law
not so you
enforcement
could
on
go
implicit
and
bias.
do
because,
anything
yes,
else,
Joe
so
Biden
that
and
you
I
could go and
recognize
and
that
propagate
implicit
that
bias
BS.
does exist, Mr. Vice President, contrary to what you may believe. We did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will
And that's
not be
all
lectured
fine and dandy to say.
Vice
I mean, might as well be
on our record.
reading a line
of
off
what
of
we have done in terms of law
some
enforcement and
script
keeping our
because
communities
it
safe
has
and a
nothing to do with
commitment
the
to reforming
actual
the criminal justice
facts
system
of
of
what
America.
happened when
Thank
she
you,
was
Senator Harris, and I'd like to pose
in
the
elected position.
first. I'd like
I
you
mean,
to
she
respond first to
did
the
everything
question
that she
on our
could as a
final topic,
prosecutor
the
to
election
go
itself.
and
President Trump has several times
hurt
refused to
the-
commit
the,
himself
the
to a
African-American
peaceful
population.
transfer of power after the election. If
And
your
then claims
ticket
to be part
wins
of it.
And President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have the support of Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet are supporting our ticket. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these next 27 days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our power, and if we use our vote and we use our voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly attempted to suppress the vote. Joe Biden, on the other hand, on that same debate stage, because clearly Donald Trump doesn't think he can run on a record because it's a failed record, Joe Biden on that stage said, hey, just please vote. So I'll repeat what Joe said. Please vote.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Pence, President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power.
No, I think he wants to make sure that the count's
Vice
right.
President Biden is declared the winner and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer
Because there's
of
a
power,
lot of BS going on,
what would be your
especially this
role
year.
and responsibility as Vice President? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, I think we're going to win this election. Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life. And I have every confidence that those same Americans that delivered that historic victory in 2016, they see this president's record where we rebuild our military. We revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulation, fighting for fair trade, unleashing American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement every single day. And I think that movement of Americans has only grown stronger in the last 4 years. But when you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election. It's amazing.
This is true.
When Joe Biden was president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. I mean, there were documents released
And
this
when
week.
that happened
CIA
during Nixon,
actually
they
made a
impeached him.
referral, to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion, case closed. And then, Senator Harris, you and your colleagues...
And then they're still trying to find reasons to get him out of office.
Tried to impeach the President of the United States over a phone call. And now Hillary Clinton has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election. So let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud. And we have a free and fair election. We know we're going to have confidence in it. And I believe in all my heart that President Donald Trump's going to be reelected for 4 more years.
You know, I've written all the questions that I've asked tonight, but for the final question of the debate, I'd like to
that was the final question.
Read a question that someone else wrote. The Utah Debate Commission asked students in the state to write essays about what they would like to ask you. And I want to close tonight's debate with the question posed by Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah.
Why the hell do
here's
we
what
care
she
what an
wrote.
8th grader
Quote,
thinks?
when I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the citizens supposed to get along? And then she added, your examples could make all the difference to bring us together, end quote. So to each of you in turn, I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question. And let me just commend you for taking an interest in public life.
And I was going to say, that I'm glad that she's at least taking interest in what's going on.
The news when I was very young.
We are more polarized now than we have ever been since the Civil War.
We believe in free and open exchange.
The same problems that plagued us during the Civil War are now plaguing us again.
And it's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation.
It's where we're heading because the two parties have literally torn the country apart.
Don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. You know, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States, one very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the two of them and their families were the very closest of friends. I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight. But when the debate is over, we come together as Americans.
It's a good
That's
answer.
what people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people. And the American people, each and every day, love a good debate. We love a good argument. But we always come together and are always there for one another.
Thank you,
in
Vice
times of
President.
need. And we've especially learned that
Thank you,
through
Mr.
the
Vice President.
difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be that is a sign of leadership and is something we should all aspire to be. And that, that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier. It so troubled him and upset him like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. What propelled Joe to run for president
What you guys have
was
been
to see that over the
stoking
course of
more
the last 4 years,
more
what Brecklin
and
described
more.
has been happening. Joe has a long-standing reputation of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history of lifting people
Once
up
again,
and
this
fighting
is going to
for
be
his-
a
You
Kamala
have to know
Harris
Joe's story to
presidency,
know
not a
that
Joe
Joe has
Biden
known
presidency.
pain, he has known suffering,
It's going to be more
and
polarization.
he has known love.
It's going to be
And so, Brecklin, when you think about
it's going
the
to make this
future,
country tear
I do
itself
believe
apart.
the future is bright.
I
And it
believe
will
that
be
if
because
Trump
of
gets
your
in, we're going to see
leadership.
more rioting than we've
And it will
ever seen. I think if
because
Biden gets in,
we
we're not
fight
going to
for
see
each
any because
person's voice
conservatives
through their
in general
vote,
have not
and we
been
get engaged in this
confrontational when it
election
comes
because
to it.
you
Because
have the ability
we
through
understand we have to
your
live in
work
the neighborhoods
and
we're in.
through eventually your vote
It's,
Thank you,
to
it's
Senator.
determine
going to
the future
tear this
of our
country
country
apart.
and what its leadership looks like.
Thank you,
It's the worst
Senator
possible
Harris.
thing
Thank
we
you,
could be
Vice
doing.
President Pence. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We want to thank also the University of Utah for its
Cruz, do you want
hospitality.
to, pause the
and
audio?
most of all, our thanks to all the Americans
Coming in.
who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, the First Lady.
Well, that was the vice president debate.
The second presidential debate.
Definitely a lot calmer. Wasn't too bad.
At Town Hall.
I think Pence definitely
We hope you'll join us there.
well spoken. He made a lot of really decent points. Did very, very well at getting his facts and figures where they belonged. Pretty good. What'd you think of it?
I think it was a more successful debate, and either party getting to go by what they believe and put out what they believe. But yeah, I think Pence did really good. He was really well spoken. He's very diplomatic and said he wasn't cutthroat like Kamala was. He wasn't trying to constantly cut the other party down. He was trying to show the pros of what the Trump administration had done, which is more important than just cutting people down.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys again watching the Conservative Fodder. We'll be seeing you next time around. Thanks, guys.